dial in. I'll check audio. And all right, let me check this audio real quick. And you go ahead and talk.
All right.
All right, let me check this audio real quick. Okay. And you go ahead and talk. All right. It's going to sound horrible, but I don't really care. All righty. Welcome to Alabama Postgame here at the Voice of College Football. I am Zach Remelius here with Christian Ballard of Ballard Sports Media. Alabama knocks off Austin Peay, kind of the way we all thought it would go, 34-0. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Make sure to like and subscribe the video. Subscribe to all our channels here at the Voice of College Football family of networks. A lot of people put in a lot of hard work just to talk about college football with all you fine folks. And also join our Discord. Talk college football all the time. Sign up at patreon.com. Just search Mark Rogers TV. We're here to talk, of course, about Alabama as they knock off Austin Peay. Christian, I'm going to hand hosting duties over to you today. So go ahead and start talking about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah,
I'll
man.
manage live chat and all the fun banners and all that fun stuff.
All right. Yeah. So as you guys heard from Zach, Alabama gets a great win today. Over Austin Peay, 34-0. Kind of a score we kind of expected to get going into this game. I figured a little bit more offense, and kind of when I preview games on my own channel, I don't like to predict shutouts, so I give them a bare minimum. Maybe we give up a garbage touchdown late in the game, but obviously that didn't happen. Our defense held on pretty well. Bryce Young having a really good game, 18 of 24, 221 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jace McClellan ran the ball pretty well off 17 carries. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, 156 yards. I mean, it looked like a elite Alabama team that we're used to seeing. But again, this isn't going to be one of those opponents that we kind of base this team off of. I mean, this isn't and no disrespect to Austin Peay whatsoever, but for Alabama standards, man, it's just not that quality opponent that we want to play. It's, one of those ones where, it's kind of what I like to call a cupcake or a rest game. And I'll say this. I mean, we had a great performance overall. I thought there were some miscues, a couple penalties. The offensive line, I think, could have cleaned up a little bit better. But overall, I mean, it was a great victory. They went into Tuscaloosa, played at home, and did what they had to do to win this game.
Yeah, kind of that. I mean, no Jahmyr Gibbs today. They just did what they had to do. Jermaine Burton had his best game as a member of the Crimson Tide, which is good to see. But yeah, I mean, all in all, they did exactly what you should do against an Austin FCS team. Austin Peay's not terrible. Coming in today, they were 7-3.
Right.
I haven't paid attention too much to the FCS this year, mostly because I just haven't. So I don't know if they're ranked or if they're probably in the playoff hunt if they're 7-3. But yeah, I mean, Alabama did what they had to do today. And I'm looking at some of these defensive stats. Not a ton of tackles for a loss, which is strange. It's kind of straight up defense. Someone commented, Branch played good. Yeah, he had a very good game. And then, yeah, you're watching this game, and I'm watching other games, and TCU's going down to the wire, and Michigan's going down to the wire right now.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't realize, and then you look at the stats, and you're like, oh my goodness, Alabama didn't have a sack today. So it was just a weird thing to pull up. You have Will Anderson, you have Dallas Turner, you have all these guys, and you have only a couple tackles for a loss. But you still got the shutout, so that's way of the wind goes. Milrow with the pick too. So I mean, good team win going into Auburn next week. You're 9-2, and God helped all of us or everyone else that roots for teams that 9-2 is disappointing. So, which is a little funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say, real quick, you mentioned going into Auburn next week. I'm always excited for the Iron Bowl. There were some things in this game that obviously I think you look at the Crimson Tide and you say they still have work to do. And we're at the end of the season. Our playoff hopes are pretty much out the window. We can still play for the Iron Bowl and bragging rights, and we can play for a bowl game. You look at some of these stats in this game. Both of these teams had 3 turnovers. Alabama lost 2 fumbles through an interception. They did have more time of possession. Um, when you look at it, they averaged about 5.8 yards a carry when they ran the ball. They averaged about 8 yards of passing play. So there were a couple things, I always look forward to Coach Saban's press conference, even after a game like this, because he always finds time to talk about and mention the things that they did wrong or didn't do well enough. And Alabama against a lesser opponent, and again, I have no disrespect whatsoever towards Austin Peay. They they played a good game. They didn't play a great game, but they played a good game. And this was one of those ones you at least hoped was a great game, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes. I mean,
So,
their first few drives, they scored a touchdown on the opening drive. Second drive, Isaiah Bond fumbles at the 1-yard line, so that's another touchdown. Score on their third drive, and then a field goal, and then end of half. So it's 17-0 going to half. I think it's a little misleading. It was 24-0 if you don't fumble at the 1-yard line, which is something that does happen, but you fumbled on the 1-yard line. And you're looking at these drives, 8 plays, 80 yards, 8 plays, 34 yards. Opening drive, I mean, when's the last time I know it's Austin Peay, and again, the Governors are having a nice season at the FCS level at 7-3, but when's the last time you saw Alabama go on a 13-play, 92-yard drive that took 6.5 minutes?
been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
They controlled the ball for most of the first half. Second half, things, punt on the first drive. They went 3 and out. Second drive, quick touchdown, and then a 5-yard. So second half, the physical advantage for Alabama came even more into play as Austin Peay went 6 plays, 3 plays, fumble, or interception, or excuse me, fumble, punt. My eyes skipped over that. Interception, punt. Like, they just couldn't do anything really in the second half. So I think 34-0 is a little misleading. I think it was a little more dominant than that. I mean, he puts one in, it's 41-0. But the interception, you're at least getting a field goal. So without a couple of dumb turnovers, this thing looks more like we would expect score-wise from an FCS team against Alabama. So that remains to be seen. We've talked about it before with Jalen Milroe. He just doesn't look polished enough as a passer. I don't think he's the starter next year, but we can go into more of that later.
Right.
So, yeah, I think, there are a couple breaks from this game looking more like we kind of thought the score would look like. But still, a shutout against any team in college football is impressive. So good for the Alabama defense, especially when they weren't forcing tackles for a loss. They were just playing defense and making plays.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned they weren't really forcing tackles for loss. Like, I don't think it was it was a great, or at least a good, defensive effort, but it wasn't like they laid it on them completely. I mean, they did what they had to do to keep them out of scoring range and hitting the end zone, but it wasn't anything really special, in my book, or my opinion, that I look at and say this is an elite defense. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying, like, there was nothing that I look at that sticks out to me.
Yeah, and even talking about getting that shutout, I mean, Austin Peay had 1st and goal at the 8 and had 4th and goal at the 3. They then missed a 25-yard field goal on 4th and goal at the 8. So they had, Austin Peay had opportunities to punch it in or to get points. They just weren't able to take advantage. So
Right.
while I want to praise the Alabama defense for getting a shutout, because like I said, it is hard to get a shutout no matter who you're playing. If at Division I, FBS or FCS, it's hard to get a shutout. Teams at the FCS level still have athletes. They still have kids that can know how to play football. Obviously, I mean even D2, D3, but these are still high end athletes, and it's easy enough to get a score or a cheap score. They just weren't able to kind of finish off drives with points because they very easily could have had 10, 13 points here in this game. But still, a shutout's a shutout. So good for the Alabama defense.
Absolutely.
And offensively, Alabama they just ran the ball. It didn't seem like Alabama was running anything too complicated. It was just run ahead, run ahead, run ahead. Chase McClellan was finding whatever he wanted. This game doesn't really change my opinion on Bill O'Brien, as far as his run game coordination. But it was nice to see an Alabama running back explode in the running game and have a consistently good game and not just a couple big runs.
Yeah, it is. The run game has definitely been a big part of the Alabama offense since Nick Saban's got there, and we kind of had some good run game today. It's still probably not where it needs to be. You mentioned you're not a fan of Bill O'Brien. I'm not a fan of Bill O'Brien either.
No. My opinion
I
of him
wasn't
has changed.
too. What's that?
My opinion of him has changed.
Yeah.
I defended him a little bit. I've always admitted his run game coordination is terrible, but now I'm kind of just like, I just don't think he's the guy for an SEC program running the offense Nick Saban wants to run. I just don't think he's the right guy. Which is fine.
Yeah,
it happens. I mean, you still made a national championship game, and you still are going to go 10-2 with him. But the fact that Bryce Young's probably the best quarterback Alabama's had and isn't going to win a national title is a little sickening.
Yeah, and I think I don't know who out there we could get to replace him right now or what, but like if we just had a different coordinator, and I'm not saying this to make excuses, I really believe that the talent is there. And think about our losses where we were an offensive stop, or not offensive stop. What am I saying? Offensive play, offensive drive away from winning a game against a team like Tennessee or a team like LSU. If we had better play calling, maybe we have some of those games back. I mean, that's a good possibility. Maybe we still have hope this season, but obviously that's not the case. And if we finish the season out with Bill O'Brien, I'm fine with that. That's okay. Finish the season with him.
He's not getting fired with
what's that?
2 games. He's not getting fired with 2 games left.
Oh yeah, no. He's definitely got to go after the season.
And Michigan beats Illinois on a field goal with 10 seconds left. We have a couple comments. I remember when you were defending. See, okay, here's my thing with Bill O'Brien. I wasn't like, oh, he's great. I was like, he's okay. Everyone's trashing him as if he's horrible. I thought his run game plans were horrible. I'm on that flat side. I just don't think he's very good. The good news for Alabama is, yeah, he'll stay the rest of the season. There's 2 games left. You're not making a change in 2 games. But he's not going to be a part of Alabama next year. He's going to get a coaching job somewhere, whether it's head coach. I don't think he's going to get like Nebraska. I think they're pretty set on Matt Rule from everything I've read. But he's going to get a coaching job somewhere. Maybe Wisconsin doesn't think Jim Leonard's all that. Just get somebody young in there that knows how to create a mismatch. I don't know who that would be. There's a lot of great offensive minds in the country. There's nobody. Fix my hat. There's not anybody, Alabama can't afford to bring in.
Right.
Ton of people I've heard mention. Dan Mullen doesn't interest me. Maybe if Milroe is your quarterback, Dan Mullen would be an interesting name to bring in.
Yeah,
Just keep,
I could see that. I don't think there's anyone that we specifically have our eye on. I don't think that there's anyone specifically that we should go after, but if we had to pick someone specific, honestly, Dan Mullen is kind of that guy. I don't think he did too bad at Florida. The problem with Florida and Dan Mullen was he couldn't recruit, number one, and he couldn't handle the defensive side of the ball. Stay away from the recruiting, keep them offense only, and
I
I
think he'd be
think it
fine.
could really help Milrow next year.
And keep him away from the media, because that was another thing that he didn't do.
Oh yeah,
He
please.
was he didn't media, and he just didn't make. From what I understand, he just didn't make a lot of friends down at Florida
Right.
in the president's office and the AD's office, and I understand he wasn't too liked there, so which kind of made ushering him out a little bit easier. Because like they went 10-2, had one down year, or 8-4, I guess. But they were a shoe throw away from playing for the playoff, and then the next year,
Right.
gone. He's gone. And like very obviously, like, oh, he's not coming back. They lost to Mizzou, and it was like, oh, he's done. He's not. Yeah, which is you don't see in a year, especially because they went like 10-2 in 2019, and they were play away from the playoff, or playing. They were play away from playing to go into the playoff against Alabama, and then done. So, yeah, he's an interesting name. Scott Frost's name I know has been thrown out there. There's, money isn't a problem at Alabama.
Right.
So we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be somebody different next year. On the defensive side, I don't know.
The defensive side of the ball has me. I mean, we played a great defensive game today, but like I say, I don't want to base it off of a team like Austin Peay. I don't want to base it off of who we played earlier this year in Louisiana Monroe. I want to base it off of like Georgia, or we play Auburn next week. I want to base it off of LSU and teams like Tennessee. I want to base it off of that. Um, I do think Pete needs to go, but at the same time, not as much as like I say that for Bill O'Brien. Um, with the talent's there for defense, the recruiting is phenomenal. The talent, it's just I think when there's pressure on our defense this year, and there's pressure on Pete Golding to make a critical call, that's when it gets rough, and that's when it gets carried away. And honestly, that's why I think we need someone a little more. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but someone that can basically, you can trust him 100% of the time.
And I don't know who that would be. I'm familiar with like a lot of offensive people. Like I think, sorry, we got a comment. We'll touch on that in a second. I don't know, like Riley at TCU, Lincoln's younger brother. I think would be an interesting name to bring in. Defensively, I don't know who those guys are. Because there's good defensive coordinators all over the place. Like you look at Blake Baker at Mizzou. I mean, he got fired at Miami because he was horrible. They gave up like 800 yards rushing to North Carolina. Comes to Mizzou, and Mizzou's gone from a bottom 20 defense to a top 20 defense. Tennessee game aside, they're awesome. But I don't know if like that's a guy they go after. Maybe try to poach somebody from a. I just don't know. I'm not as familiar with like those coordinators because they don't get as much like pizzazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be an interesting offseason for Alabama, like because there's going to be some changes in coaching. I don't know, like around the SEC, how many coaches are going to get fired. Just, I think because, how many coaches in the SEC right now are on the hot seat as we kind of break into the SEC talk in general?
I know there's definitely a couple hot seat coaches. The question is who it is. Based on their season, would Jimbo Fisher be on the hot seat? Although I know he's an offensive mind.
They can't fire him this year.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I know Texas A&M isn't hurting for money like Alabama, but that buyout is like $85 million.
Yeah,
that they're not. They need to hire an OC though. Same thing. Another coach I can think of again, Missouri. I think Drinkwitz is on the hot seat, but I don't think he's going to get fired this year, unless they lose to like New Mexico State tonight. But they need to hire an offensive coordinator. Jimbo needs an offensive coordinator. So, Napier is in a bit of trouble. They lost to Vanderbilt. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that actually. So, yeah,
that'll be an interesting year too for them. But other than that, teams are going to bring in coordinators. Alabama's going to change coordinators. So the most interesting team this offseason might be Alabama. When's the last time we could say that?
Yeah.
Hang on. Did Michigan State lose? Michigan State lost. Speaking of coaches with big contracts like Jimbo. And Michigan State's got to go to Penn State next week. If they lose that game, they're not going to a bowl.
Yeah, Mel Tucker. That's right.
Nick Saban Jr. talks about, look at teams that have a good offensive coordinator who are like under them, like passing coordinator, teams running coordinator, Eagles and Dolphins. Yeah, there's no shortage of options for Alabama.
Right. The thing for me personally, I can't think of anybody because, like,
I just don't know those names, and I haven't
right. You're not gonna go and get like a head coach and yank him from his job. You're gonna go and get actual coordinators somewhere. And the thing is, man, there's so many teams that have replaced their coordinators this year. There's so many young guys. I'm trying to think if I made I think on my channel I talked about it with someone on a live stream a couple weeks ago. Like, is there anyone on Alabama's current staff that maybe you look at that's been there a while that maybe you would promote? Like, let's say, for example, if we got rid of Pete Golding, a guy that sticks out to me that's been there quite a while and has done a good job, at least in my opinion, the defensive line coach is Freddie Roach. Like, is that someone that maybe you work with that you would trust to call plays?
I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason for Alabama. I don't know. He'd be an option. I just do not know what they're going to do at coordinator offensively or defensively. Like I said, it's going to be a rare opportunity for Alabama to be the most interesting team as far as like coaching positioning. In the SEC, and maybe amongst the country for teams that aren't hiring a head coach.
Yeah.
Oh, Marvin Harrison Jr. does not belong on a field with college kids. That kid is absurd. I know this is Alabama and we shouldn't praise Ohio State, but that kid is just hilariously good. So anything else you wanted to talk about from this game? You're my host, my friend.
I think we pretty much have touched base on it. It's 34-0. It's a great shutout victory, great defensive performance. Offense just could have played better. I think play calling could have been better. I mean, it's a good win. I mean, Alabama did not cover. The line was like what 44, something like that.
Something like that.
They failed
I
to
never look at.
cover.
I should have. I don't look at
They
lines for FCS games.
What's that?
I never look at lines for FCS games.
Oh yeah, I got you. Um, 3 turnovers for Alabama. That's not good. That's something they definitely got to clean up. They did lose 2 fumbles in the game, and they threw an interception poorly into coverage. I mean, I know that's going to happen for Bryce Young as a quarterback. They got to do a better job on the offensive line of protection. I mean, they just got to clean some stuff up and um, learn from mistakes and mishaps in this game, and just go forward and give it a little bit extra and just play better.
So we got a question. Do you think Joe Cox can call plays on offense? Man, just kind of look at Joe Cox's background. I remember when he was at Georgia. Maybe it's hard to be like it's hard to. And if you're saying like I say we see what we can do, they're not firing Bill O'Brien before the end of the year. It's hard to say what some like. It's hard to be like, oh yeah, I think this guy could call plays when he's never done it. Like as far as I can tell, he's been a wide receivers coach. He's been a tight ends coach.
Yeah. I had to
I don't think he's ever
research that
called
name.
plays. So
That sounds familiar. Joe Cox.
he was the quarterback at Georgia after Matt Stafford before Aaron Murray
Oh yeah.
for 1 year.
Okay.
He was like they went like 6-7 with like a AJ Green somehow. And
Yeah. Yeah, I knew I heard that name before. I don't know.
the fact that I know that off the top
I'll
of my
leave
head
that to
drives me nuts.
you. I'll leave that to you because I don't know if that'd be a good candidate for us.
It's hard to say if he would be or not because he's never called plays. So could he be? Yeah, absolutely. But he could also not. I don't know because he's never called plays at this level. So or at all, as far as I can tell, even at like grad school. He was the coaching staff at Mallard Creek High School. Like I can give a bit of his background. He was a quarterback's position coach. Okay, so he was a QB coach, and they won a state title. And then he was the offensive coordinator for Mallard Creek High School, and they won another state title. Became a grad assistant at Colorado State, tight end coach at Colorado State. Was there for a few years. Then became a tight end coach at South Carolina. And then he moved to wide receivers at South Carolina. And then when Shane Beamer got hired, he wasn't retained. He then went to the Charlotte 49ers as a tight ends coach, and now he's a tight ends coach at Alabama. So outside of high school, he has no real experience calling plays, and obviously different. So one more comment just talking about Joe Cox. Help out the remainder season co-OC. I just don't think they're going to do that to Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, no, listen.
I know what you're saying. I just don't think they're going to do Nick Saban Jr. I just don't think they're going to do that to Bill O'Brien. Especially maybe for the bowl game. Like, could Joe Cox potentially call the bowl game if Bill O'Brien gets a job? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I think that would be an interesting way to do things. Because in that bowl game, you're probably not going to have Bryce Young. You're probably not going to have some of the seniors. So, yeah, I think he could call plays in the bowl game. And then if he does well there, you see what you have moving forward. He could certainly be a candidate. and let me run through this real quick. You're listening to Alabama Postgame here at the Voice of College Football. Alabama knocks off Austin Peay 34-0. Not a lot to talk about with this game because it kind of went how we thought. But Alabama leaves some opportunities for more points on the field. Like the video and subscribe. Subscribe to all our channels across the Voice of College Football network, family of networks. Join our Discord, talk college football all the time with a bunch of nerds like us. I mean that nicely, Christian. And then join the Voice of College Football call-in show at 11:30 p.m. I don't know why I have 2 periods on p.m. That looks bad. I made Eastern time over at our main channel, Mark Rogers TV, Voice of College Football. And Mark will break down all these games. You know, Michigan escapes Illinois, TCU against their biggest rival, fire drill field goal for the win. I don't know how they did it, but believe in the Hypno-Toad. All sorts of things to talk about. We still got a full day of games to go, especially out in the Pac-12. Whatever you want to, real quick. Yeah, he is. He's an analyst. Nothing really there.
Yeah, former LSU quarterback.
Yeah, he's an analyst. Who knows? I mean, there'll be names available. Like if Carolina brings in a new coach, is Joe Brady available? All sorts of names moving forward with coaching.
Yeah.
All right, so whatever you want to talk about next.
Yeah, like I say, man, I really don't have much to say on this game. I mean, going into it, I looked at it as almost a bye week. I mean, it was a lesser opponent. No offense. It was going to be one of those games where Alabama could go out there and do whatever they wanted to on offense, on defense, and they pretty much did that today. I always, like I say, look forward to what Coach has to say post game. It'd be interesting to hear his post game. I mean, I personally think that the defense played phenomenal, and I think that the offense could have put more points up, maybe had a play or two back, had just better play calling at times. I mean, that's really how I view it post game. And, like I said, I'm really, as a fan, like I get so hyped up for the Iron Bowl and Thanksgiving. And, I'm really excited for that game. But clearly, Alabama has a lot of work to do going forward.
We could talk about the Iron Bowl a little bit. I mean, what are your thoughts going into the biggest game of the year, in the state of Alabama?
Yeah, well, like I said, really excited for it. We got it this year at Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Auburn hasn't won there since Cam Newton in 2010. I still say that it's that rivalry where anything is possible. An upset could occur if we're not careful. I mean, Alabama almost had an upset last year. If you go back and look at the double overtime game or the 4 overtime game, when I look at this year's matchup, it's I some people might view it as just another game because of how bad Auburn has been this year. They're 4-6 currently right now. They got a 4.3% chance to win the game. They just don't really have much rhythm on offense. I do think that making the switch to Robbie Ashford, I think, is a good idea. Tank Bigsby's a good running back. They're coming off they have a bye week. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. They play Do they play tonight?
Yeah, I don't know if they're a part of SEC. Kind of the joke that is SEC before rivalry week. They play.
Oh, they're playing right now against Western Kentucky, which is fixing to start. So yeah, they're playing Western
interesting. Western
Kentucky.
Kentucky has some dudes.
Yeah, so they're playing Western Kentucky. Alabama's coming off Austin Peay. You go into this rivalry game. You're both of these teams. You come off lesser opponents. You also, prior to that, both of these teams had, um, conference win. Maybe a game that Auburn should have lost was Texas A&M. I really don't know about that one. I think that one kind of a coin flip, but to have an interim coach in Cadillac Williams, a former player, by the way, who was really, really good, to have him be the interim coach after this god awful losing streak that Brian Harsin had, to have Cadillac Williams come in, get a victory, and then let's assume they win today. Maybe there's a little bit of motivation and some momentum for Auburn going into this Iron Bowl. I think that there might be a little bit, but I think more so what we should look out for is what Alabama team are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that struggles to win the game? Are we going to get one that doesn't want to show up? Or are we going to get one that wants to go out and dominate the opponent in every single fashion? So that's kind of what I have to say right now going into it is what Alabama team are we going to get next Saturday? And also, does Auburn have a little bit of change and momentum with a new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, since Cadillac's gotten there, they've played harder. They play harder. They seem to they've been better. I mean, they beat Texas A&M. Their defense is pretty solid. Ashford's not a very good quarterback, but that's okay. And Alabama still has stuff to play for. They aren't guaranteed a spot in a New Year's Bowl. Because as of this moment, I'm going to go ahead and assume Georgia and Tennessee are going to make the playoff.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and assume that because I don't think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. So I think right now you're looking at a playoff of Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, TCU, but they didn't look good today, and they have a Big 12 title game still to play. USC will probably be in that hunt. LSU will be in that hunt, but I don't think LSU is going to beat Georgia. But then for New Year's Six choice, you're going to have LSU or Alabama. And I did probably pick Alabama if I had to guess. But you still have something to play for here. Like you lose this game, you're going to the Citrus Bowl, and that's a massive disappointing season. So
absolutely. I would fully agree.
So they have something to play for. I think it'll be interesting. I think Alabama's going to win. It's at home, so I'm not really nervous about the road game closeness. So I think Alabama will win. It might be close for a quarter, 2 quarters, maybe even 2.5. But I think Alabama will win something in the range of 38-17, 41-20, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Auburn's defense is good. I just don't think the offense is going to put them in places to succeed.
I definitely would say, if anything, that the defense has an issue with is consistency, number one, and then being a 4-quarter defense. It's not going to stick around for 4 quarters against Bryce Young in Alabama. And I'm not, here to bash. I'm not here to make fun or anything. It's just kind of how it's been. I think they had games, where they gave up against Mississippi State. They had games against LSU. They looked okay defensively to start out against a team like Penn State back in, I think that was week 2 or 3. They looked okay at the start, but they did not look good at the finish. And I think that's what's going to be interesting too is, how's the defense going to look for Auburn? Are we going to see them start out defensively against us? Are they going to slow us down towards the end? Or is this going to be weird, a weird type of game where, maybe it does show up all the way around like it should? Or,
I think
what's expected of Auburn, of course.
I think the defense is in those games, especially the Penn State game. The defense was fine. They're playing fine. They're playing good until the end when their offense just kept putting them in bad spots. You can only the greatest defenses can only overcome so much. We see it all over the country. So they play harder. They play smarter. I think they'll be in the game for a while. I just don't know what that final score is going to look like. It's at home. Alabama should win pretty comfortably against Auburn. Although we'll be back here next week to talk about it. So,
yeah, looking forward to it.
I think the last thing, and this is something I wanted to talk about, was how do you feel about SEC Week 13 or second last week of the season scheduling? Where Alabama's playing Austin Peay, Auburn's playing Western Kentucky, LSU's playing UAB, Missouri's playing New Mexico State. Just a bunch of teams, just not a lot of, Texas A&M's
it's
playing
like all these
UMass.
FCS against SEC.
What's up?
It's like all the FCS opponents versus SEC.
or even like lower end FBS teams against the SEC in the second to last week of the season. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's been that way for quite some time. It's kind of become I don't know if I want to say a tradition, but it's just something you've gotten used to. I think that before rivalry weekend, like, you shouldn't put too much on a team. So, like, you don't go out and get the biggest opponent. But at the same time, can you find, like, could Alabama have found a better non-conference than Austin Peay? Sure. You could do a little bit better than that, but if you want to go out and pick a non-conference team, and even it be group of, like, a couple years ago, I remember we played the Citadel back in 2018. For where they play, that's a good team. And Austin Peay is a good team too, where they play. Just find the best that you can, obviously. I would say the next best conference to go after to schedule outside of Power 5 play, probably the Sun Belt, maybe.
Because you're not going to get the AAC, you're not going to get like Tulane or somebody like that.
Yeah. I guess to answer your question, is that I guess I'm okay with it. I don't really see it being that big of a deal who we play before rivalry weekend starts. It is what it is. Some opponents, are going to be tougher than other opponents. Some are going to be worth watching. Some are not going to be worth watching. And it's, just something that, I guess we just kind of deal with. I'm happy as long as Alabama's performing well, if I'm being honest.
That's fair. We have a couple comments that are like, it's boring, but I understand it. Yeah, it is kind of deflating. We have great games all year, second last week of the year. Nobody cares. Georgia's playing Kentucky today. That game looked like it would be okay a month ago before the world saw that Kentucky just isn't that good, unfortunately for them. Yeah, I think it's going to go away. Oh, sorry. I think it's going to go away here soon. When they go to 9 conference games, you're going to have your 3 intermittent throughout the season. But I think it's going to end up going away, which I'm fine with. Clemson's playing Miami today, so that's basically like playing an FCS team. Sorry, that was a cheap shot. But It's just kind of, I have the same kind of opinion. It's whatever. I don't love it, but what are you gonna do? What power do I have to make things change?
Right.
Yeah, Mississippi State played East Tennessee State. Texas A&M only put up 20 on UMass. Oh my goodness. Tennessee goes to South Carolina. Ole Miss gets Arkansas. Yeah, just a lot of today. But that's, I mean, if you're not used to it by now, that's on you. Did Maryland actually get a stop on Ohio State? Holy cow. We got a comment from Juice Gaines. I mean, we're 9-2, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but they just look slow. It's the root of a lot of our issues. What do you think about that? Here,
yeah, I mean, look, you don't have to be a fast tempo type of team, but I think what he means by slow here is like I would assume at least, and he can correct me in the comments if he's wrong, but maybe slow to develop. Like maybe this team would have been more mature and much better improved at this point in the season. I mean, it's gotten better. I know we've lost games, but it has come together. It just hasn't come together enough like it should, and it's not playing like a team that would. How do I want to put this? I really got to think about how I want to put this, man. Like there's chemistry for the offense, there's chemistry for the defense. The coaching has not improved. It hasn't stepped up to the next level each week. It has not, like, for an Alabama team, look, the expectation is always going to be like national championship or bust. We know that. We know what the standard is. We know what the expectations are. Is it going to start off kind of slow? Yes. Is that okay? Maybe. It depends, but you would expect Alabama to fix the issues right away, get it together, and be okay. It really hasn't done that this year.
No, and I see if he slow at the secondary and slow at the wide receiver position. Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
I see what he's saying. Yeah.
We've talked about this before. Is Alabama has just been a factory for wide receivers for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Going from Amari, you had Julio and then Amari Cooper and then Calvin Ridley, and then of course just the plethora: Judy, Waddle, James Williams, John Mechie, like just a plethora of guys they've had over the last few years. They don't have that guy. Some of the freshmen have looked okay in games, but like Jermaine Burton's not a speedster. The speedster was supposed to be Tyler Harrell, and he just didn't.
Yeah.
He was hurt, and then he just never got really involved. As far as the secondary, yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, you watched the Tennessee game; they were just getting blown by it. Now, Tennessee presents all sorts of problems for all teams. Jalen Hyatt being a slot receiver is just the biggest pain in the butt in the world because you can't cover him with a corner because most college corners don't know how to play slot, and then you can't cover him with a star safety because he's just going to burn you. So,
yeah.
But yeah, even that McCray kid today we could keep up with. Kid from Texas was another matchup problem. Yeah, I agree, which is weird because Alabama's defense, or at least secondary, is super talented. And part of the issue, I think part of the issue for Alabama is this year we were expecting a dominant pass rush. And at times, Will Anderson's been very good. Dallas Turner's had very good games. It hasn't been there consistently. And these guys, no matter how talented they are, and Eli Ricks has just kind of been a no-show for a lot of games this year, and he didn't play today. They can't hold up for that long, even against college receivers, man-to-man, or even in zone. And they get burned and they get cooked. We do love how we ran the ball. Yeah, I mean, it was working. And kind of the goal of these games seems to be just develop things and don't have any injuries. So before you head to your big rivalry game. So, yeah, I agree. The secondary has looked slow all year. And it's really talented. So, just it's super talented. Chalk it up to lack of speed to development and all that kind of stuff, and keep up with top end speed wide receivers. And to be fair, there's not a lot of college teams that can keep up with those. I mean, no team has really kept up with Jalen Hyatt since Alabama. So, what do you think about all that? Corners, secondary. How do you think their play has been this year? How do you think the secondary has been this season? Because Emmanuel Henderson looks like a guy for the next couple of years. Yeah, he looks like a guy. See what happens moving forward. Christian, what do you think? How do you think the secondary has played this year? Just as a whole, as we start wrapping up the season.
I mean, it's probably not the best secondary in college football, but I think it's come together at times. I think that it's, I think it needs to come together a little bit more. Something that Nick Saban stresses on is, like whenever we have a bad loss and it comes down to our defense or something, or even after a win when we give up a lot of points, the issue with the defense is the secondary and everybody could not get off the field on third down. I think we've had that issue at times this year, but it hasn't been too much of a concern. I mean, we have a leader in Jordan Battle. We have a leader in DeMarco Helms. We have Kool-Aid. We have a couple young guys. I think some of these players are doing their part to the best that they can. The question is it good enough to help the team? And from what I've seen, I mean, I've been okay, I guess, on the secondary. I mean, we're allowing on like even 200 yards passing compared to allowing 112 yards rushing. So where is our strength on defense? It's up front with the linebacking core and the defensive line. The weak part of the defense clearly is the secondary. It's not something to be too proud of, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the biggest concern, like all the way around. I mean, it needs improvement, but it's nothing that we need to, hang our heads on too much.
Yeah, they have. I would agree. They haven't been what I expected this season, especially bringing in Eli
for
Ricks.
Sure. No.
I thought they would be one of the top secondaries in the country, and they're far from bad. They're very far from bad. It's still a pretty good secondary, comparative to the rest of college football. I just wasn't as dominant as I think we all thought it would be. A1C played dirty a couple times. No, you're not. And that's been a thing all year, and we've talked about that too. Very undisciplined Alabama team. I don't know where that comes from. I didn't even see the penalty stats today because we didn't really touch on it. But, 4 for 30, that's nothing. But, yeah, I noticed that too. Do you think they'll underachieve this season? I think the entire secondary underachieved. I think the entire defense underachieved this season. They've had their good games, but, man, there have just been too many games where they haven't looked good. And they only gave up 19 points to Texas, but that once when Ewers was in the game, like they couldn't stop Texas, they couldn't stop Tennessee. They didn't do a good job against LSU. Ole Miss, they didn't do a very good job against. I know they only gave up 24 points, and they battled. But man, I think the entire defense underachieved. What do you think?
What do you think
about that question?
The one on the screen or the one?
Yes.
Do I think Battle underachieved this season? Jordan Battle. I think he was, first off, the thing about Jordan Battle, he came back when, which I don't blame him for. He was highly recruited. Jordan Battle is one of my favorite players to watch. He really is. Came back for his senior year, a 5-star recruit, very well built. Has he underperformed this season? Considering the fact that now I give a lot of credit to DeMarco Hellams and what he's done to overachieve this year. But yes, I would definitely say that a guy like Jordan Battle has underperformed this year at times because, I mean, he's only got 53 tackles. He's defended 2 passes. He's yet to get a pick. He's yet to recover a fumble. He doesn't have any sacks. Like, he has nothing except the only thing you could say is 53 tackles. And this is not a guy like that, oh, where's he been? Why hasn't he been playing? He's been playing. He's been healthy. He's been out there. To answer your question, Nick Saban Jr., he has definitely underachieved this season because I think going into this season, and part of him coming back for his senior year was he wanted to get better. He wanted to be that guy for Alabama. And, the guy to step up in his place is DeMarco Hellams and Brian Branch. Those two have outperformed him on a serious level, and it's not even close. And I don't want to take anything away from them, but I don't know what's gone on with Jordan Battle. It's not like he doesn't get in trouble. He doesn't have a lot of penalties. He just doesn't show up, and I don't know what's caused that. I don't know if there's been issues that we haven't heard. I don't know, but to answer Nick Saban Jr.'s question in the comments, I mean, I definitely would say he's an underperformer this year.
I think we both agree with that. Let's see. We had a couple more questions. Forward to Simpson or Milroe. I agree. I think we talked about this. We've talked about this. I think it's going to be Simpson next year. I don't think Milroe is a good enough passer. I think it is going to end up being Ty Simpson. Like, it has to be. Like, Milroe hasn't gotten better as a passer. I guess he has gotten better, but it's still nowhere near close to good enough. We'll see how it does in the offseason, but I think it's going to be Simpson going into 2023.
I agree. I agree that it's probably going to be Ty Simpson. I mean, a 5-star recruit. We still need to see what he can do, but from what I have seen, and even on like practice footage, I mean, he's just balling out and outperforming everybody. I don't think Melrose bad, obviously. Like, should he be given a shot to be the starting guy next year after Bryce is gone? I think we should consider giving him a chance. I think that he has an entire off season. I mean, we're going a year from now when one of those two guys will be our new starting quarterback. And this is all assuming Bryce does go pro.
He will. He's a top 5.
This is it's going to be a quarterback battle to watch. I think that, Jalen Milroe being the more experienced on the roster, being there longer, being the backup to Bryce, learning a system, one might say, it should be him, but at the same time, you got this 5-star in Ty Simpson who compared to, like, we've seen Milrow at times this year. We've also seen Ty Simpson. I like Ty's play better and his development better than I do Jalen Milrow. And again, none of this is to throw Milrow under the bus.
Do you think Battle hurt his draft stock? I think with how he's underachieved this year, which we both agree on, yeah. I mean, that's what I have to say.
And if you underachieve, you pretty much hurt your draft stock if you think about it. So I would agree.
I know you want Milrow, but he'd be nasty at running back or just any way to get in him. See, I think Ty's going to be the quarterback next year, but if Milrow's on the offense, or on the team, I think he'll have packages for him. Like he's kind of like a mini. When Florida won their first title with Chris Leak at quarterback, you can do some things like they did with Tebow, except he's more explosive than Tebow. He's not as physical as a runner as Tebow was. But there are certain things you can do with Jalen Milrow, packages-wise, short yard, running packages. That maybe the interesting is you have to make sure it's not like you're running two quarterbacks, because if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
Do you think one of the freshmen that is coming in can push for the starting job?
Are you talking about one of the freshman quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Who do we have? That's something I got to try to remember and keep up with there. Because I look at Milrow and I look at Ty, and then it's kind of a blank after that.
So next year at quarterback,
Amani Stewart,
Eli Holstein. He's a 4-star
quarterback.
quarterback.
Oh yeah. Eli Holston, and then
from Zachary.
God, there's another one.
Dylan Lonergan.
There's going to definitely be a quarterback battle. We know that for sure. I personally think it comes down to Milrow or Ty Simpson. I don't really see anybody else out there that could really push to be a starter.
Yeah, unless like a stud transfers, like somebody that should, like Max Duggan or something transfers, and it's like, well, okay. I like Milrow. You have to orchestrate your offense, and whatever quarterback you decide to go with. Yeah, and that's going to be that's going to be what's going to make. Like if you hire Dan Mullen, Milrow is a pretty good choice to have as your starter, because he knows how to organize an offense around like a quarterback that's more of a running threat. Whether that was Nick Fitzgerald or Dak Prescott, he did things with Tim Tebow. I think Dan Mullen, if he's your choice, Milrow would be a fine starter in that system. Yeah, it's all going to come down to who the OC is, who, what they decide to run with, and then orchestrating an offense. Spring ball is going to be important, because when's the last time we haven't had an heir apparent at Alabama? When we went to Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I guess so.
Because he went to Jalen, and then the Tua was the obvious next guy. Mac was obviously going to get 2020, and then it was obviously going to be Bryce Young. Now, there's two options at least for next year. We don't really know either one, and Marvin Harrison again should not be on a college field. So it'll be it's going to be an interesting next. I know Alabama fans are disappointed. They're not going to play in the playoff. They're not going to play in the SEC championship game. But after the bowl game, those next 4-ish months are going to be very interesting, because see what you do with your coordinators, what you do with your quarterback situation, and what happens with your quarterback situation if there is a transfer that could come in and blow everybody away.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be I don't know if I want to say fun off season, but it's definitely going to be interesting and something to watch. What's that?
Yeah, interesting is the word I would use. Not fun. Fun is like, you're a bad team, you're hiring a new coach, and you're like, okay, what's this going to look like? What's this going to look like? Will Levis just threw a pick in the red zone against Georgia because he's apparently a top 5 pick. Sure. I don't know. For any of you that follow me on Twitter, I make fun of Will Levis a lot because I think it's ridiculous that he's projected to be above CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or even Hendon Hooker, really. But Hendon Hooker is also 30 years old. So anything else you wanted to touch on or anything else? Because I'll let you go ahead and then, start wrapping us up, and then I'll run through, some of our other things, and we'll get going.
Yeah, man. Just again, another good win for Alabama. It wasn't pretty. There's a lot of cleaning up to do in Tuscaloosa, and just wrap this one up and get ready for next week with Auburn. So, that's really all I got left to say.
We'll be back here next week with Auburn. I want to thank Christian for being here.
Thank you.
You can find him, Christian, give your plugs. Tell them where people can find you.
Yeah, so I run a YouTube channel. We do mostly college football. Gonna try to get in as football dies down a bit. We'll try to get into some basketball and everything, but I'm working to be a future sports journalist, a college football analyst, maybe someday. You can find me on YouTube for now at Ballard Sports Media. We're working towards 800 subscribers. And Zach, I really appreciate you these past couple weeks letting me come on here and talk about Alabama football and talk about these games with you, man.
Yeah, sure thing, man. It's been fun. It's so much nicer to have two people to bounce ideas off of, and it's just not me rambling to myself.
Yeah.
That's so much more fun. You guys can find me on Twitter at PsychoZ50. Find all my insane rants. Listen to me getting pissed at my college football teams and my college basketball teams and baseball teams. But I do give good movie reviews. So you can find me there. But thank you for tuning in to Alabama Postgame at the voice of college football. Alabama does win 34-0 over Austin Peay. Join our Discord, talk college football all the time. Sign up at Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. We, of course, want to thank Mark, for the opportunity to do this. I would talk college football to myself in the shower or on car rides to work, but it's nice to be able to do that, without with people. Join the Voice College College Football College Show at 11:30 Eastern over on our main channel. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, will cover this entire day. And it's been an interesting day so far. TCU escapes. Michigan escapes. Ohio State is, they'll be fine against Maryland, but it's only 7-6 right now. So it's a long day of college football, but make sure to tune into that. And then like the video, subscribe to the channel, share. We just want to talk Alabama football, SEC football. We'll be back here next week against Auburn, and I'm sure we'll make videos like previewing the bowl game and things like that as we wind down this season, and we'll have off-season content for you all. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the channel. If you have friends that are Alabama fans and need a place to vent, yell. Just don't yell at us. Yell at other people. That's fine, or yell into the void about why is Pete Golding sending a safety on 3rd and 7. I don't, whatever. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Christian, for being here today.
Yes, sir.
We'll be back. Like I said, we'll be back next week. They announced a kickoff time? They have announced a kickoff time.
It's 2:30 on CBS is the kickoff.
Okay, so it's the 2:30 kick.
Yeah, 2:30 Central.
Thank goodness it's not Friday because I want to watch the World Cup, U.S. versus England. So, but we'll be back next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Have a great weekend. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And let's get ready for rivalry week here in the SEC and across the country. Have a good night, folks.